What happens when a country music superstar sits down for what should be a routine interview, only to find himself in the middle of a verbal battlefield that spirals completely out of control? Blake Shelton thought he was coming on The View to talk about his latest album and maybe share some lighthearted stories from his time on The Voice. Instead, he found himself locked in an increasingly intense confrontation with Joy Behar that would leave the studio audience stunned. The other hosts scrambling for damage control and ultimately result in one of the most dramatic walk-offs in daytime television history. Before we dive into exactly what went down, make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below with your thoughts on celebrity interviews gone wrong. Now, let's get into the explosive details of how a simple promotional appearance turned into television chaos. Blake Shelton walked onto the View set that morning with his trademark easy smile and relaxed demeanor. He'd done this dance countless times before, promoting albums, tours, and various projects across dozens of talk shows. The country star settled into his chair, exchanging pleasantries with Whoopi Goldberg, Sarah N., and the other hosts as the cameras rolled. Everything seemed perfectly normal as Whoopi kicked off the interview with the standard welcome. "Blake, thanks for being here with us today. Your new album has been getting incredible reviews, and fans are loving the direction you've taken with this project," Whoopi began, her tone warm and professional. Blake leaned back comfortably, his Oklahoma drawl evident as he responded, "Well, thank you, Whoopi. You know, I'm really proud of this one. We took some risks, tried some new sounds, but kept that authentic country heart that my fans expect. It's been a fun journey putting it together." The conversation flowed smoothly as they discussed his musical evolution, his experiences coaching on The Voice, and his life in Oklahoma. Blake was in his element, cracking jokes and sharing anecdotes. That had the audience chuckling. The other hosts chimed in with their own questions about his personal life and career highlights. For the first 15 minutes, it was exactly the kind of interview both sides wanted: light, entertaining, and promotional. Then Joy Behar decided to shift the conversation in a different direction. "Blake, I have to ask," Joy interjected, her voice carrying a sharper edge than the previous questions. "You've been pretty vocal about your political views over the years. Living in Oklahoma, being part of the country music community, I imagine you have some strong opinions about what's happening in this country right now." Blake's smile faltered slightly, but he maintained his composure. "Well, Joy, I try to keep my music and my politics separate. I think people come to my shows to have a good time and forget about all that stuff for a while. I respect that my fans have all kinds of different viewpoints, but surely you have opinions," Joy pressed, leaning forward in her chair. "I mean, we're living in pretty turbulent times. Climate change, social justice issues, economic inequality. These aren't just political talking points, they're real problems affecting real people." The tension in the studio was palpable now. Blake shifted uncomfortably, glancing toward Whoopi as if hoping she might redirect the conversation. The audience had gone quiet, sensing the change in atmosphere. Sarah N. looked concerned, while the other hosts exchanged worried glances. "Look, Joy, I think everyone's entitled to their opinions," Blake said carefully. "I've got mine, you've got yours, but I came here today to talk about music, not to get into some political debate on national television." Joy wasn't backing down. "But isn't that part of the problem? People in positions of influence, people with platforms, staying silent when they could be using their voice to make a difference. Your fans look up to you. Blake, don't you think you have a responsibility to speak out?" Blake's jaw tightened visibly. "A responsibility? Joy, my responsibility is to my music and my fans. I make music that makes people feel good, that brings them together. I don't need to be lecturing anybody about politics." "That's a pretty privileged position to take," Joy shot back, her voice rising. "When you're a wealthy white man living in a red state, it's easy to say you want to stay out of politics. But what about the people who don't have that luxury? What about the people who are directly affected by the policies you're apparently too comfortable to speak out against?" The other hosts were now actively trying to intervene. Whoopi held up her hand, saying, "Okay, let's maybe take a step back here." But Blake had heard enough. His famous easygoing demeanor was cracking, replaced by a steely determination. "Hold on just a minute. Joy, you don't know anything about my life or where I come from. You sit here in your New York studio making assumptions about people you've never met, talking down to folks like you're somehow better than them." "I'm not talking down to anyone," Joy replied, her voice equally heated. "I'm trying to have a real conversation about real issues instead of just promoting your latest album like nothing else matters in the world." "Real conversation." Blake's voice was getting louder now. "This isn't a conversation, Joy. This is you trying to trap me into saying something you can use against me. You invited me here under false pretenses, and now you're trying to make me look like some kind of villain because I won't play your game." The studio audience was completely silent now, watching this confrontation unfold with fascination and discomfort. Camera operators were getting different angles, sensing they were capturing something unprecedented. The other hosts were clearly out of their depth, unsure how to regain control of the situation. Joy leaned back in her chair, a slight smirk playing at the corners of her mouth. I didn't invite you here, Blake. You came here to promote your album, to sell your music. But if you can't handle a few tough questions, maybe you should stick to singing about trucks and beer. That comment landed like a slap across Blake's face. His eyes flashed with anger, and for a moment, it looked like he might explode. Instead, he took a deep breath and spoke with deadly calm. You know what, Joy, you just showed exactly who you are. You think you're so smart. Country music is about real people living real lives, Blake continued, his voice steady but filled with controlled anger. It's about hardworking folks who get up every morning and do their jobs, who love their families, who serve their communities. But you wouldn't understand that, would you, Joy? You're too busy sitting in your ivory tower judging everyone else. Joy's eyes narrowed. Oh please, Blake, don't give me that salt of the earth routine. You're worth millions of dollars. You live in a mansion. You're about as far from the common man as I am, so drop the act. The difference is, I remember where I came from. Blake shot back. I don't pretend to be something I'm not, and I don't look down on the people who made me who I am. You want to talk about privilege? Let's talk about the privilege of thinking you can lecture everyone else about how they should think and what they should believe. Whoopi tried once more to regain control. Guys, we're getting a little heated here. Maybe we should know. Whoopi, Joy interrupted, holding up her hand. I think this is important. Blake here is a perfect example of what's wrong with celebrity culture. All these stars who think they can just stay above the fray while the world burns around them. Blake laughed, but there was no humor in it. Celebrity culture. Joy, you're on television every single day telling people what to think. You literally make a living giving your opinions to millions of people. How is that not celebrity culture? Because I'm not afraid to take a stand. Joy replied sharply. I'm not worried about protecting my brand or keeping my fanbase happy. I say what I believe, even when it's unpopular. You say what you believe to an audience that already agrees with you, Blake countered. That's not brave, Joy. That's preaching to the choir. You want to know what takes courage? Trying to bring people together instead of dividing them. Trying to find common ground instead of picking fights. Sarah N. finally found her voice. Blake has a point about bringing people together. Maybe we can find some common ground here. But Joy wasn't interested in common ground. Common ground, Sarah, some things are black and white. Some things are right and wrong. And staying silent in the face of injustice isn't bringing people together, it's enabling the problem. Blake's patience was wearing thin. Who made you the judge of what's right and wrong? Who gave you the authority to decide what injustice is? You don't speak for everyone, Joy, even though you act like you do. I speak for people who don't have a voice, Joy replied, her voice rising again. I speak for people who are being hurt by the policies and attitudes that people like you enable by staying silent. People like me. Blake's voice was dangerously quiet now. What exactly do you mean by people like me, Joy? The studio fell silent. Everyone could feel the weight of that question hanging in the air. Joy realized she had stepped into dangerous territory, but she was too committed to back down now. I mean people who have the platform and the influence to make a difference but choose not to use it, she said, trying to soften her approach slightly. People who benefit from the system but won't speak out against its flaws. Blake stared at her for a long moment. You know what, Joy? You just proved my point. You don't know anything about what I do or don't do. You don't know what causes I support or what organizations I donate to. You don't know how I treat people or what I stand for. But you're perfectly comfortable making assumptions and passing judgment. Then, tell us, Joy challenged. Tell us what you stand for. Tell us what causes you support. Use your platform right now. Blake shook his head. I don't owe you or anyone else an explanation of my private life or my personal beliefs. That's not what this is about, and you know it. This is about you trying to force me into some political box so you can either praise me or attack me based on whether I agree with your worldview. The other hosts were looking increasingly uncomfortable. Whoopi kept glancing at the producers off camera, clearly hoping for some kind of intervention. The audience was riveted, but the tension was becoming almost unbearable. That's not what this is about, Joy protested. This is about accountability. This is about using your influence responsibly. My influence. Blake's voice was getting louder again. Joy, you want to talk about influence? You're on national television right now, trying to ambush me into making political statements. You're using your platform to attack me for not using mine the way you want me to. How is that responsible? I'm holding you accountable, Joy insisted. Someone has to. Accountable for what? Blake demanded. For making music, for entertaining people, for trying to stay out of political fights. When did that become a crime? It's not a crime, it's a choice, Joy replied. And choices have consequences. Your choice to stay silent enables the very problems you claim to want to avoid. Blake stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. The sudden movement caught everyone off guard. You know what, Joy? I've had enough of this. I came here to talk about music, to have a pleasant conversation, maybe share some laughs. Instead, you've turned this into some kind of political inquisition. Blake, please sit down, Whoopi said urgently. Let's just take a breath here. But Blake was already unhooking his microphone. No, Whoopi, this is exactly what's wrong with everything right now. You can't just have a conversation anymore. Everything has to be a fight. Everything has to be political. Everything has to be about taking sides. Joy wasn't backing down even now. Some things are worth fighting for, Blake. Some things are more important than keeping everyone comfortable. Blake turned to face her directly. You know what's worth fighting for, Joy? Respect, decency, treating people like human beings instead of political props. You invited me here as a guest, and you've spent the last 20 minutes trying to tear me down. I've been trying to have a real conversation, Joy shot back. I'm sorry if that makes you uncomfortable, but some of us care about more than just selling records. That was the final straw. Blake's face flushed with anger. You think I don't care about anything but selling records? You think my music, my fans, my life's work, is just some shallow commercial enterprise? You have no idea what you're talking about. Then enlighten me, Joy challenged. Tell me what your music. Joy wasn't about to let him have the last word. That's right, Blake, just walk away. That's what people like you always do when things get uncomfortable. You run. Blake stopped dead in his tracks. For a moment, the entire studio held its breath. Slowly, he turned back around, his face a mask of barely controlled fury. What did you just say? I said you're running away, Joy repeated, doubling down. Just like you run away from every difficult conversation, every challenging question, every opportunity to actually stand for something meaningful. The other hosts were practically begging with their eyes for Joy to stop, but she was beyond listening to reason now. She had committed to this confrontation completely, and she wasn't backing down. Blake walked back toward the table, his movements deliberate and controlled. You think I'm running away? You think I'm afraid of difficult conversations? Joy, I've been having difficult conversations my whole life. I've dealt with more adversity and challenge than you could possibly imagine. Then why won't you have this one? Joy challenged. Why won't you engage with the real issues facing this country? Why won't you use your voice for something that matters? Because it's not your place to demand that from me, Blake replied, his voice deadly quiet. It's not your place to decide what I should care about or how I should express myself. You're not my conscience, Joy. You're not anyone's conscience. Someone has to be. Joy shot back. Someone has to hold people accountable when they refuse to take responsibility for their influence. Blake laughed bitterly. Accountable to who? To you. To the people who agree with your politics. What about accountability to my fans? What about accountability to the people who actually know me, who actually care about what I have to say? Your fans deserve better than platitudes about staying out of politics, Joy replied. They deserve a role model who isn't afraid to stand up for what's right, and who decides what's right. Joy. Blake's voice was rising again. You, the media, the political establishment. Maybe, just maybe, people can figure out what's right for themselves without celebrities telling them how to think. Joy shook her head dismissively. That's naive, Blake. People look up to celebrities. They follow their lead. When you stay silent, you're sending a message, whether you want to or not. The message I'm sending is that people should think for themselves, Blake replied. The message I'm sending is that music can bring people together without dividing them into political camps. The message I'm sending is that maybe we can find something to agree on instead of looking for reasons to fight. That's a luxury you can afford, Joy said. But what about the people who can't afford to stay neutral? What about the people who are being hurt right now by the very policies you're too comfortable to speak out against? Blake's composure finally cracked completely. You keep saying that like you know something about my life, like you know what I've been through, or what I care about. You don't know anything. Joy, you sit here in your studio making assumptions about people you've never met, judging them by standards you've created in your own mind. I'm judging you by your actions, Joy replied. Or in your case, your lack of action. My lack of action. Blake's voice was almost a shout now. You think making music that brings joy to millions of people isn't action. You think entertaining families, bringing communities together, giving people something to smile about isn't action. You think that's worthless. I think it's not enough, Joy said bluntly. Not when there are bigger issues at stake. Blake stared at her in disbelief. Not enough. Joy, who made you the judge of what's enough? Who gave you the authority to decide what other people should be doing with their lives? The same authority that gives you the right to stay silent, Joy replied. We all make choices about how we use our voices. I choose to speak out. You choose to stay quiet. But don't pretend your choice doesn't have consequences. You're right, Blake said suddenly, his voice becoming calm again. Choices do have consequences. And my choice right now is to not waste another second of my life listening to someone who clearly has no respect for me or what I do. He started walking toward the edge of the set again, but but this time Joy's voice followed him with renewed intensity. "That's it, Blake. Just walk away. Show your fans exactly who you really are. Show them what happens when someone challenges you to be better. Then you are." Blake paused at the edge of the set, his back to the table. Without turning around, he spoke one final time. "You know what, Joy? I hope your viewers get to see exactly who you really are too. Someone who invites a guest onto their show and then spends the entire time trying to tear them down. Someone who thinks their political opinions are more important than basic human decency. At least I have political opinions." Joy called out, "At least I'm not afraid to stand for something." Blake finally turned around one last time, his face showing a mixture of anger, disappointment, and disgust. "I stand for music, Joy. I stand for bringing people together. I stand for treating people with respect, even when they don't deserve it. And right now, I stand for having enough self-respect to walk away from someone who clearly doesn't understand what any of those things mean." With that, Blake Shelton walked off the View set, leaving behind a stunned audience, a frantic production crew, and a panel of hosts who were still trying to process what had just happened. Joy sat back in her chair, her arms crossed, looking defiant but clearly shaken by the intensity of the confrontation. Whoopi tried to restore some semblance of normalcy. "Well, that was certainly unexpected. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll be discussing the latest developments in entertainment news." But as the cameras cut away, everyone knew they had just witnessed something unprecedented. The tension in the studio was still palpable. The audience was buzzing with excited whispers, and somewhere in the hallway, Blake Shelton was probably wondering how a simple album promotion had turned into one of the most dramatic television moments of his career. The confrontation had revealed something deeper than just a disagreement about politics or celebrity responsibility. It had exposed the fundamental divide between those who believe public figures have an obligation to use their platforms for activism and those who believe they have the right to choose how and when to engage with controversial issues. Neither side had backed down, neither had found common ground, and the result was a spectacular collision that left everyone involved bruised and the audience captivated. What started as a routine interview had become a masterclass in how quickly civil discourse can break down when both sides are absolutely convinced they're right and absolutely unwilling to listen to the other perspective. So what do you think? Was Joy right to push Blake to take a stand on important issues, or was Blake justified in walking away from what he saw as an unfair attack? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and make sure to subscribe for more explosive celebrity moments that had everyone talking.